Thanks so much for this opportunity, guys. Really excited to be here. Sort of convinced that you guys are all actually looking to make some sort of change. It's freaking Thursday night on a long weekend. Why else would you be here, right? So just want to take hopefully the next 10 minutes, and what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to time myself because I tend to blab on at times. So I'm going to try to get a hold of time. So I'm going to take the next 10 minutes to talk to you guys about some personal experience I've had. Definitely TEDxToronto has been part of it, but I thought that last week we had a conversation with the team over here, and we were talking about sharing experiences that you guys can actually take advantage of. And hopefully that could, this talk can inspire you to find your path within your own world, whether it ends up being entrepreneur or intrapreneur. I think either one has its values. So again, my name is Afshin. I currently work at Jet Cooper. It's a user experience agency. I also work with TEDxToronto. I've been fortunate enough to be part of our organization for the past 3 years. So today I want to talk to you guys about, talk to you about risk and how it's related to innovation. I think Farah and I already did a great job of setting this up for me. We were supposed to just figure out if we should be talking to each other, but this worked out perfectly. Thank you. So before I do that, I think I want to take a step back and give you a bit of a background on myself. Now, roughly about 10 years ago, I was in my university life. I attended university for 2 years. And first I went to York, and then I went to U of T. And you may ask why. Well, first I got into York, and then my best friend moved to U of T, so then I followed him. And I don't know why you guys made a decision to come here, but straight up, that was my decision there. So now he was a year ahead of me. I got to U of T, and everything was pretty good. There was this ongoing feeling that I felt like there's something wrong. There were some things that I loved about this university. I was actually at St. George. The campus is beautiful. There's so many great people to meet as well. Some of the courses were amazing. I definitely recommend taking Mark Kingwell's Intro to Western Philosophies if he's still teaching it. At the same time, there was this nagging feeling that maybe this isn't for me. I wasn't really finding any alignment with the sort of education I was getting. And in hindsight, things are 2020. When you take a look at the word education itself, it just means acquiring knowledge. So whether it's a formal education or not formal education, I believe that it works out for you as long as you're actually doing it. So what I did is, at that time, simultaneously, I was working part-time with an entrepreneur. He had a business in Woodbridge, and it was an event planning business. And I worked with him part-time over the school year. And then I realized that, maybe I want to actually take up a full-time gig with him. So he made me an offer, and I decided to take a stab at it. And I decided to take my first risk and drop out of university. So that risk came with a couple of things that I had to consider. First of all the OSAP money was gone after 2 years, 10 grand. Second of all, I wasn't going to have education, first one in my family, which was fantastic because my mom was pissed off and angry. So she still hasn't let that go, by the way. So, event planning, got into it after a year. Surprise, surprise, it didn't work out the way I wanted it to. My mom told me, I told you so, and she felt really, really happy about that. And then, I was out of a job, I was out of money, and I had some experience, but one great thing that came from that was actually getting a taste for entrepreneurship. So I think the natural thing to do was to start a business. So, funny enough, actually, the friend that I moved to U of T with, he dropped out with me. So then, at this point, both of us decided that, hey, let's reflect on some of the challenges we had at university and try to see if we can make an experience better. One of the things that we noticed was in the first year, there was a challenge in setting up for OSAP, finding out where all the cool people hang out because you're just fresh at the campus. And, we figured that maybe we'll start a website that allows people to connect with one another in the university environment. Now, this is not going to go with the way you think it's going to go. This was another failure. We started a company called @MyU. It started off in roughly around June, and we aim to have someone build out a website for us so we can release it in time for Frosh Week. The guy ate our money, and then we got our friend to pretend to be a lawyer. He wrote a letter to him. We got some of it back, and we said, okay, cool, that was a good lesson. Let's do something else. So we're like, okay, let's be hard-headed. Let's take the next thing. Let's take another risk and now start our own business. But start our own business building web development, because this guy couldn't do it, but how hard could it be? So the risks here were simple. We just had no idea what the hell we were doing. None of us were coders or designers or developers. None of us had run a business before. I mean, we did, but it was a failure. And we said, okay, what the hell? Let's just go with it. So I noticed that my time's running out, so I'm going to try to skip ahead of some of this story. But essentially, quick lesson over here was that the individual who sort of wasn't able to deliver on this taught us a lesson. The lesson was that you have to accept responsibility for whatever risk you take. I mean, as much as we tried to point a finger at him, net, we were out of money and he was on his way while we still didn't have anything to do. So this new business that we started was called Apollo Media. It was a web development business. And at the time, again, the risk of it was that there was no guaranteed income. We had no idea if it's going to be sustainable. And my mom was still angry. So we moved forward from there, and at least this time we took an educated risk, and by that I mean that we took a look at the market. We noticed that there was a lot of small businesses. At the same time, they were really interested in getting more exposure, so they were using websites for that. But with search engine optimization really coming into the market, and that's where you work with search engines for your listing to come up higher, there was an opportunity to address this. Now, back in the day, it was so easy to do it, but now it's got more complicated. So we started serving a lot of small businesses. In our first year, our first project was $250. Yay! It was my old boss that I was doing the event planning thing with. And then our highest project was $5,000, which we were so happy about. And we still keep in touch with that client, which is interesting. Second year, we had 4 employees. We had somewhat of a sustainable income. We made ends meet, but it still wasn't enough. It seemed like something is missing. It wasn't like we never got into this thing to build out websites for $5,000 each and then make $30,000 or $40,000 each at the end of the year without really even creating any sort of an impact. So we decided, why don't we go where a lot of entrepreneurs or a lot of marketers in Toronto live and work? We moved downtown. This was another risk because we were taking up higher rent. We had to let go of some of our people and take up a lot of the work ourselves. But we knew the proximity is going to be something important. And by moving, we got access to this network. And the network was downtown network. And you can imagine with just, people, more density with regards to the people that are doing innovative things, you meet more of them and you get inspired more and more. So quick thing over here, we got inspired through an entrepreneur that we met that was having a startup, and we decided to, start our own startup. Now our startup was called Daily Challenge, somewhat reflective of all the challenges that we had gone through, and as well, something where we thought, we would be able to address some of the challenges that we see in the market. Again, over here, the challenge was and the risk was we had saved some money, so we had to spend it all. We had to borrow money from family and friends, and then now my mom was just losing it. She was extremely pissed off. So Daily Challenge was, we remedied that risk by, going through this formula that I created, which I said, if you have 51% intuition and 49% logic, it's gotta feel good, and you gotta look into the market again to see if there's opportunity there, and then take the risk. So here, we took a look at social media. It was a rise of social media in 2008. At the same time, companies were really interested in addressing corporate social responsibility in an interactive way with their customers. So no longer was someone interested in buying a can of Coke and knowing that 10 cents of it goes to Polar Bear Foundation. They still do that. And they say that, $2 million in 5 years will be given to the Polar Bear Foundation. Do you guys know how much Coke makes a year? Not even going to answer that, look into it. But anyway, over here, we thought that, look, naturally people want to do good. Companies want to see how people do good. So it just makes sense for us to bring a site called Daily Challenge, send people daily challenges, and then tie these challenges with corporations. One of the ones that worked out really, really well for us was buy the stranger behind you a cup of coffee. So we did this in April 9th, 2009, April 4th, 2009. We looked into it. We saw the highest record of people consecutively buying the person behind them a cup of coffee was 403. And we said we're going to break this world record. So we set out this whole program on a weekend, Saturday. It was freaking cold. And we stood outside Second Cup at Queen and John, and we invited people to come in and buy the person behind them a cup of coffee. Now, we needed to really bring a cause behind this thing, and we figured that, look, we're going to convince this Second Cup owner to donate a portion of his income from the hours that we're doing this to Sick Kids Foundation. And this was all done based on the community suggestions. That night, before while we were getting prepared, and we had a $500 marketing budget for this, we got a call from Second Cup head office saying that, hey, you know what, whatever Benny, the store owner, does, we'll match it. So we literally ran to the store, grabbed Sharpies, and we had our printed posters. Didn't have any money to reprint them. We started scratching off 50%, made it 100% of proceeds go to Sick Kids Foundation. That day, in a freezing cold, we managed to get 603 people into Second Cup in 4 hours, and all the funds went to Sick Kids Foundation. Not only that, but Benny told us that in that 4 hours, he made more money than he would usually make on a Saturday. So even though he gave away 50% of his income to Second Cup, he still actually had a profitable 4 hours compared to every other Saturday. More important than that, we trended the third highest trend on Twitter worldwide. We were competing with Easter and Jesus because it was the Easter long weekend, and they have a few years over us, so it didn't work. That's the thing that we had to deal with. So we decided to do that program full out with Second Cups, 173 stores on September 30th, 2009. And our goal was to get 5,000 people now to do this with us. And the goal this time was that, hey, you know what, while we're getting these people, let's get more sponsors and make more of an impact. Let's say that for every cup of coffee you buy for the person behind you in line, $5 goes to Sick Kids Foundation. So the sponsors were smart enough and said, okay, you know what, we're gonna put a cap at 15 grand for this thing just in case it goes crazy. And they were right. Instead of 5,000, we had 2,000 people buy the person behind them a cup of coffee in the 173 stores in Second Cup stores in Ontario. Now, this was interesting because we thought that for sure we have a national deal, things are picking up, we ran out of funding, no more money to borrow from mom, turn around and tell mom, I told you so, it's gonna be great. But then the VP of marketing at Second Cup changed and they dropped the project. So at this point, we said, okay, you know what, we have 4 employees, we have over 300 challenges, we broke a world record twice, third highest trend, all these other things, but unfortunately we have to close down shop. So what we did at this point is one of my friends said, hey, you know what, we're gonna take your space and we're gonna start a company called Jet Cooper and we're gonna start doing user experience. And I said, fantastic, all the best luck to you. And I started to look into the next thing, which was consulting that came naturally to us. We figured, hey, you know what, we've got enough experience, we built some sort of a reputation for ourselves, so let's get into it. The risks again here. Well, nobody's gonna trust you because you're, 25-year-old kid who's just done a couple of things, maybe it was luck, you don't have education. In fact, the first interview I went to during this time, the guy almost made me cry because I didn't have my MBA. And he was wondering how you're gonna be a consultant in this company. So, and on top of that, it was a tough market to getting any jobs at that point. So what I started to do was think about, okay, well, all along something has been fueling this desire to do something good, and it's been really getting inspiration. And how do I inspire other people if I'm not getting inspiration enough myself? So I had to get closer to people that were, inspiring others. So I set out to find innovation and inspiration. And, the risk in here was that there's no money in just finding it. You got to do something with it. So anyways, I found TEDxToronto. I was in the audience when Tanya actually came and spoke. And this was at Glenn Gould Studios, and we were sitting there and we're getting inspired by 10 speakers that came there and just blew our minds away. And then and there I knew that I have to get involved with this organization. Now, this is my advice to you. If something gives you goosebumps, definitely follow it. And that's what happened to me. So the next week I met up with Dan Jacob, who was a co-chair at the time, said that I got to get involved with this thing. Now a little bit of background for those of you who didn't raise your hand when you were asked if you know TED. I'm going to be hurrying up quickly. Essentially, TED started in 1984. TED stands for Technology, Entertainment, and Design. In 2009, because of the success that they had, they started to give out licenses to different cities, schools, and organizations to run their own TEDx events, X standing for Independently Organized Event. Now, we got the license in 2009. I wasn't part of it, but from 2011, I got to be a part of it. I led the sponsorship initially, and we started to grow the event from there. First year, 120 people. Second year, when Tanya spoke, there was 330 people. Third year when I got involved, 750 people. Last year, we ran it at the Sony Center, 1,300 people. And we've had amazing speakers such as Tanya, entrepreneurs, innovators, scientists, 6-year-old kid come and speak at it. I encourage you to take a look at the talks and find your inspiration there. Part of our goal last year when I was selected as co-chair was to actually keep growing this thing. So we decided that for us to keep growing it, we need to have sponsors come in. So we started to think about how we can legitimize this organization. We put out a not-for-profit behind it, so then now we could start collecting checks in the name of the not-for-profit, not trying to convince Samsung to write a check to Afshin Mousavian. They don't like that. So, and this year, fortunate enough to be part of the organization, and we're continuing to grow it. We're looking now to build out a sustainable model, speaking with TED directly to see how we can build out a model that other TEDx organizers can follow, because they're giving out numerous licenses. For instance, there's more than 16 licenses in Toronto. Now, back to entrepreneurship quickly. So again, I took a risk and I joined my friend who started a business 3 years before, Jet Cooper, last year. And the risk here was that it's going to be so much fun working with amazing people and loving what you do. And this time around, it was a little bit more clear on what I wanted to do. And I took in those 4 lessons that I talk about, which was responsibility, education, making a responsible guess, taking a responsible risk and taking responsibility for it, taking an educated risk, using that formula of 51% your intuition and 49% your logic and the tingly feeling that came with it. So working with these guys to grow the company has been a fantastic experience. And just going over this again, I think that as you guys take a look at your own journeys right now, given that you're giving time to this thing on a long weekend, Thursday nights, you're crazy, you should definitely look at taking risks in an effective way, getting as close as possible to innovators and other individuals that are actually doing the things you want to do, and get involved. And that brings me to my next point, which is if you're interested to volunteer for TEDxToronto, our event's going to be happening in September. Feel free to email volunteers at TEDxToronto, and we'll be happy to have you on board. Thank you so much.